Let's see. Beautiful, easy to grow, inexpensive, and the 2022 plant of the year? Why would you not want a peperomia in your collection? Welcome back to my channel. I'm Cece with One Green Pea, and today I'm going to talk about one of my favorite genus of plants, the peperomia. Today, I'm going to talk all about care tips and propagation and even answer common questions I get about the peperomia. I'm also going to show you my very favorite varieties. Let's get started. Peperomia is in the Peperomia or peppercorn family. They originated in South America and Mexico and the West Indies. They are a very forgiving and easy care plant. I like to consider them succulent-like. They come in such a broad spectrum of varieties, and I feel like there's a place for the peperomia in beginner's collection as well as someone who's been caring for plants for a really long time, because there's so many fun varieties to explore. Let's talk about care practices. Peperomia appreciate bright, indirect light. They can tolerate low light, but they really don't like direct light for a long period of time on their foliage. I have my plants in a variety of different places in my home. The happiest are the ones in the east and south facing windows, although I have a couple of small ones on my bed frame and they're pretty far away from a south facing window. I just rotate them every time I water so that they get a nice amount of light. So like I said at the beginning, they're very tolerant and forgiving, so they can adapt to lower light. You're going to see better variegation and quicker growth when you're giving them more light. As far as watering, I tend to water my plants when the top inch or so of the soil is wet. Now, that's a really general rule of thumb. The bigger plants in a bigger pot, I let them get a little drier, so maybe a couple of knuckles down in the soil is dry. Whereas my newest plant, this tiny little guy, I have to be a lot more careful and water this one more often because it's just simply in a smaller pot, so I don't let it dry all the way out. Of course, the amount of water you're giving them is going to depend on the amount of light they're giving. Those two variables are always connected. In terms of soil, I have all of my peperomia in just my general soil mix. I take a general all-purpose soil mix and I add in orchid bark and perlite for drainage and chunky airiness. A fun feature of the peperomia is that they do flower. Their flowers are called inflorescence. So you can see that there are these long spikes and these are all teeny tiny flowers there on that spike. Now, there are varying views on this. Some people say that when you allow them to flower, then they're not putting energy into the foliage. I kind of appreciate them, so I just let them go until a plant gets too many, and then I just pluck them off. And they're really easy to remove. You simply pull down as low as you can get. Try not to get stem and leaf there, and just pull it right out. And I just think it means that the plant is healthy and happy. One of the more common questions I get about the peperomia is, why are the leaves turning brown and crispy? That could be due to a number of different factors. It could be that the plant is underwatered, or it could be that the humidity level in your space is too low. If those two things are not present, if you're watering it well and you know you have pretty good humidity, then it could be that there's a buildup of salts in the soil. And if that's the case, you want to give the soil a full flush out. So water really heavily, so water just pours out the bottom of the pot. And that should help with that. If it's a persistent problem, then you could just completely repot the plant and remove as much soil as possible. Another question I get is regards to the yellowing of leaves. Now understand that that is just what happens when leaves get old and get ready to fall off. So if the leaves are near the bottom here, that could just be normal aging of the plant, and you can just pop them off and discard them. Now it could also mean that the plant is getting too much water. So again, check your care practices. That's going to be the best indicator for you. Another question I get is, why is my plant so floppy? And that could be for a couple of different reasons as well. One, it could simply be thirsty. See, these plants are going to express to you when they are thirsty, and the leaves get really soft and the stems can get droopy. Another reason that your plant is getting kind of droopy or leaning could just be that it's growing normally. This plant is just getting big and the leaves are heavy, and that is just the normal growth pattern of this particular variety of Peperomia. I rather like it. If you don't, then you can easily just trim the plant up, give it a nice little trim back, and then propagate the stems that you've trimmed. One of the most fun features of the Peperomia is that they propagate so readily. In fact, you can use pretty much any part of the Peperomia except the roots and create a new plant from that. One of the very easiest is to take a stem cutting. So how would you do that? You would take your plant and you would make a cut right above a node. And a node is the bumpy portion, right, where a leaf is coming out. You would be sure that you have 3 or 4 nodes above your cut, and then you would simply place the stem that you've cut off in water or soil. I prefer the water method because I like to watch the roots grow, but I have been successful also placing a propagate right into soil. This gorgeous pot of Peperomia was created simply from leaf cuttings. I had done a big propagation of some of my obtusifolias and had a lot of leaves left over and trimmed off the bottom leaves of each stem. And so I just placed them in a pot, and it took a while, but this is what has happened. I have an entirely new plant, and it has several different varieties right in that plant. I think that's really cool. Now I want to show you some of my favorite varieties. These two plants are the Peperomia obtusifolia, 2 different variations, and this is the Golden Gate, and I don't remember what this one is called. The obtusifolia also comes in just a plain green. So you can see these two are variegated. They are the ones that I use to create this beautiful pot that has all 3 different varieties in it. This is the Peperomia caperata rosso. These leaves, as you can see, are much smaller and more abundant than the obtusifolia. And this guy is bouncing back. He suffered a little bit of damage recently. We had some work done in our house and the workers were not very careful around him, so he got kind of squished, but he is coming back, and you can see all these beautiful inflorescence flowers. So he's happy. These are 2 varieties of the Caperata Emerald Ripple. This is the plain green version, although you can see that the stems of the inflorescence are beautiful pink. And this is the red version, just simply called the Emerald Red. I wanted to point this guy out. He is also a version of the Emerald Ripple, and this came from 2 tiny little leaf cuttings that just continue to push out a whole bunch of growth in this pot. He has been really fun to watch, and if you look really close inside of there, you can see there are even new stems and leaves coming as well. The most recent Peperomia that I added to my collection is this sweet little Peperomia Hope. Now the Hope is a trailing version of the Peperomia, and you can see that the stems get longer and little leaves come, and as they develop, it'll cascade. And I love that it's a thick, the leaves are succulent-like, but it will also be a cascading plant. If you have any further questions about the peperomia, leave them down in the comments below. And if you have a peperomia that I haven't mentioned, please leave that down there as well. Thank you so much for watching my video. Again, if you enjoyed it, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. Until next time, my plant friends, let's keep growing together a greener world.